And now, here is the host of the show, Eddie Crow.
Hour number 2 of Teleforum, but in a really completely coincidental way, we're sticking sort of with the theme. The first hour, Colt Codner was here with the CCBC Foundation. We were talking about the new scholarship, the aviation scholarship, and I had no idea that CCBC was bad mamma jammas when it comes to that program. Well, we're sticking with the flight theme, and if I can come up with somebody flightier than my next guest, nothing comes to mind. How you doing, Tom? Tom Gargaro is here. You know Tom from the Car Cruise. You know Tom from everywhere. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing well, Eddie. Thank you very much. Thanks for having us here today.
Absolutely, and you brought somebody. This is being live streamed again. If you want to go to our Facebook page, you can see Tom and you can see Dave. And all right, Tom, tell everybody who Dave is.
Yeah,
you ran down the list, and I'm like, that's way too many credentials. I won't remember that.
With us today, we're honored to have Dave Messersmith with us, longtime member of Air Heritage Museum up there. Dave is also the director of operations for this historic C-47 that we want to talk about today. He's in charge of the plane. He flies the plane. He repairs the plane. He maintains the plane. And he is really our expert on this historic C-47. So I wanted to introduce Dave Messersmith and turn it over to you two.
All right, Dave, number one, good to see you. Number two, is there not a sense of paranoia that as good a mechanic as you can be, is there a leap of faith that you're getting in a plane that you made flyable? Is there any fear there? Because that my OCD, that would terrify me. I fixed it. Now it's going to go up in the air. Do you have those thoughts?
Well, first off, Eddie, thanks for having us here today. We appreciate the exposure you're giving us. And the maintenance on the aircraft is really controlled by FAA regulation. So unlike your car where you can just change to big tires or jack your truck up, the maintenance on this type of aircraft is very specifically controlled by the Federal Aviation Administration. So it's maintained to the highest standards. So if you get on our aircraft, you really have very little to worry about.
So no shade tree mechanicking going on?
Absolutely not. No. Especially when lives are involved.
Yeah.
If you want to shade tree your car, it's not a problem. It breaks down. You call your best friend. He brings a rope and takes you back. So we don't have any AAA on this airplane. So we really have to maintain it to the highest level that we possibly can.
Yeah,
we've got a great bunch of people at Air Heritage. We have a lot of retired mechanics that we're working on airliners for U.S. Air that are still in the area. So this aircraft and all the aircraft at Air Heritage Museum get the top-of-the-line maintenance.
All right, talk about the C-47 that we're talking about. This isn't just an airplane. It's a cool as all get-out airplane, but there's a lot more going on with this airplane than that.
Well, certainly. This is a derivative of the DC-3. Most people, when you say C-47, aren't quite sure what we're talking about. When you say DC-3, pretty much everybody has heard of the DC-3. It's probably the most famous airplane in the world.
What's the difference? Is the civilian versus military classification?
The Douglas Company out in California was building the DC-3 for the airlines as World War II started to ramp up. So the military came in and said, that's a perfect airplane for us. Started painting them green, started modifying them for a military use. So the big difference from the DC-3 to the C-47 would be a giant cargo door on the side. We have a big double door, big enough that you can put Jeeps in, cargo, we can do airdrop, we can do medevac missions. So that was basically what became the DC-3 turned into a C-47 military model.
How did you get involved with the Air Heritage Museum?
Well, I've been in aviation since I was about, 10 years old. My father was a pilot, not for the airlines, just basically for fun. Went through all the aviation stuff that a kid goes through, and so I've been pretty much around airplanes my whole life. I went in the Air Force right out of high school, thinking I wanted to be a mechanic as a career. After about 4 years of fixing airplanes for the Air Force, I decided that I liked breaking airplanes more than I liked fixing them, so I switched over to a different career path and took the pilot career path and ended up actually doing 20 years with the Air Force, finished up retiring flying C-141 transport aircraft. And then after that, 1985, I took a job with good old local U.S. Airways here in Pittsburgh and never looked back. Retired at the mandatory age of 65 about 2 years ago, and I've been involved with Air Heritage since I moved to the area. They started out as a one airplane, one hangar museum, and that's when I stepped in and started consulting and helping them a little bit. And unfortunately, the C-47 showed up, and that's been probably one of my top airplanes in life that I ever wanted to fly. So basically, hook, line, and sinker, in I went.
All right, you talk about top airplane. I know a couple pilots, and seems like every pilot has a wish list of planes I'd like to fly. Is it any plane, or is it specific planes, Dave, that when you came up, you're like, that one looks more interesting than the other one? How do pilots put together that list?
Well, it just depends on where you're coming from. I've got about 140 different models of airplanes in my logbook that I've flown. I like to fly one of everything. So I enjoy seeing the different aspects of each aircraft. But there are some aircraft that stand out. Everybody knows the P-51 from World War II.
Sure.
That's got to be on the top of everybody's dream sheet. The space shuttle, of course, that would be, if you really want to aim high, you don't really fly it. I think that's probably called falling with style.
Yeah,
but
the gliding at best.
That's right, yes. And Rock, I think, will probably be a race between you and the space shuttle to get to the ground. The C-47 is such a piece of history. There are a lot of aircraft out there, but the C-47 was pretty much one of the top assets that not only provided for World War II, but probably helped us win World War II. It has just an unbelievable history. It goes on and on. So that's probably in the top 5 airplanes that I wanted to fly before I die. So.
All right, let me ask you this. Dave Messersmith and Tom Gargaro are my guests. We're talking about the Air Heritage Museum and the C-47. We'll get to the specifics in a second. Dave, sketchiest airplane you ever flew? When you got out of it, you said, okay, check that off my list. I ain't getting back in it.
Careful now.
Sketchiest.
Yeah.
Well, the older you get, the better you are at staying away from sketchy aircraft.
Is that the old and bold but not both mentality?
I think it goes along that line.
Yeah.
No, I don't think there's anything been really sketchy. There are probably airplanes that I probably didn't want to fly again, but most of the stuff that I've been able to fly has been well proven. Mostly antiques and classics that have thousands of hours on them. Probably the sketchiest was a little ultralight, just a single seat. If you remember old Dan Donatella, he had a little ultralight called a Hummer. I didn't fly his, but I flew someone else's, and when I landed, I thought, you know what, I don't think I ever need to do that again.
Really? Wow.
But no, most of the stuff out there is well proven. All fun. Every airplane is like a human being. It's got a different personality. It has different quirks. No, I don't think there's anything I would call sketchy.
How did you stick to the path? There's a lot of kids when they're 12, 14 years old want to do what their dad does, and there's a lot of kids as young men say, that's my path. But you never grew bored with it, did you?
Well, I was as a young age, I was doing a lot of racing, motorcycles and cars in Southern California, and so I really didn't have a big interest in aviation. My father kind of pushed me towards that, and I really wasn't interested because my motorcycle was right in the garage.
I got you.
And so later on, I did pick up an interest in maintenance. You have to fix your motorcycles. Most people that race know that you better know how to turn wrenches or you're in trouble.
Yeah.
So as the started talking to the military, they realized my mechanical skills and scooped me up for what I thought was going to be a 4-year tour as a mechanic. So, but then I really got in. I liked aviation, and I started flying on my days off. I was actually living in England, and I started flying with the Royal Air Force on weekends and basically fell in love with aviation. And from there, just made a big turn at the Y in the road and pursued aviation after that. Got out, got a 4-year degree, got the Air Force Reserves, convinced that they should send me back to pilot training, and I finished a 20-year career with the Air Force. So all you taxpayers, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Let's put it into perspective. Yeah, thank you.
Dave Messersmith is my guest, along with Tom Gargaro. Tom, talk about the specifics about what's happening with that C-47. You were telling me a little bit off the air. We're talking about family and legacy with what's going on. What's going on and when, and how can people watch it?
Yeah, so I think it's not very often that any of us get to experience living old history in the moment, right? And that's what's going to be happening this week at Air Heritage. The original pilot of this plane, when it was put into service in World War II, was Captain Edward Frome. Now, with a lot of research that, and Dave and the team up at Air Heritage did, we have Captain Frome's son is coming in to actually see the airplane for the first time this Wednesday at the museum. He's never seen it in person. I do believe, Dave, his sister Barbara from Blosser has come in and seen the airplane before. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct. She was in the area prior to our first flight after restoration. So she actually had a chance to see the airplane. It wasn't flyable, but she did sit in the seat that her father sat in World War II. And as we like to say, alligator tears all the way around. So.
And I would defer to you, David, about the historic significance about what's going to happen Friday.
Oh, certainly. Friday, we're doing a flyover for the Cemetery of the Alleghenies for a fallen Navy career officer, and it just happens to be a friend of a friend. It asked us if we would do a flyby for his funeral. So we had some empty seats, and I knew that the Froms were going to be in the area, so we were able to work it out where we would have David on board. And, of course, as sisters sometimes say, if David's getting a ride, I'm coming out. I want a ride. And so quickly bought a ticket, and both of his children will be out here then Friday for their first flight on their father's airplane. So,
and this is not like a replica of their father's airplane. This is very well documented too, right?
Oh,
We have the
yeah.
documentation from the day it was put into service in the United States Army Air Corps at the time. In 1944, I believe it was put into service, correct?
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about the airplane.
Please.
The DC-3, which this aircraft is a derivative of, was designed in the late 30s. I think around 1938, the first version of the DC-3 first flew. Destined for the airlines, I think TWA and American Airlines were on the list to receive these aircraft. And then the war started, and now they started building the C-47 version. Our aircraft was ordered in 1943 by the War Department. It was finally delivered in September 1944. So it did not see D-Day, the D-Day invasion, which was June of 1944. The aircraft showed up in September of 1944, and that's actually the snapshot in time that we took for the restoration. The aircraft went through several iterations over the years. It was converted to VIP transport, looked like an airliner inside with nice seats and a galley and a lav. But we took September 1944 as our restoration starting point. So that's when the aircraft showed up just outside of London. Most of you have heard of Stonehenge out by Salisbury. Out there was RAF, Royal Air Force, Welford. We leased a bunch of bases from the British during World War II, and that's where it was based from September 1944 until the spring of 1945. So from that location, this actual aircraft did medevacs, it did cargo, it did resupply missions, but the big mission that it did, and most people have heard of Battle of the Bulge.
Yeah,
absolutely.
The 101st Airborne was pinned down, so on the 24th and 26th of December 1944, this actual aircraft airdropped supplies to the 101st Airborne during the Battle of the Bulge. That was its first very historic event for this aircraft. It did take some small arms fire. We've looked all over the airplane trying to find bullet holes, but it looks like they've replaced complete panels. But it did take some small arms fire from some Germans, and that was in December. People ask me, why didn't they fly on the 25th? And I'd like to laugh and say that the military gets Christmas off. But all my military listeners, I'm sure you know, they don't care.
Yeah.
So actually they had problems with low ceilings, icing, bad weather. So later on in 1945, now we pushed the Germans out of France. So this aircraft moved right outside of Paris, just south of Paris. They moved the whole squadron actually south of Paris. So by March of 1945, the next major military operation was the crossing of the Rhine, better known as Operation Varsity. This aircraft towed 2 assault gliders behind it at the same time. These assault gliders were actually built over in Ohio by the Waco Company, and that was Operation Varsity. So this actual aircraft is a World War II veteran, a World War II piece of history. I tell a lot of people, you go to Disney World, everything's fake. It's a plastic rock painted to look like a rock. This is not a fake airplane painted to look like something else. It's actually a veteran of World War II. We're very proud of it.
Absolutely.
I'll go back into the history of Air Heritage a little bit. Air Heritage, well, this aircraft, let me go back and talk about the aircraft. After the war was over, they had a lot of these left over. Douglas actually built 10,000 C-47s. Surprisingly, the Japanese, who at one time were our friends, they built about 1,500 of them under license, and then also the Russians, who were at that time our friends, also built about another 1,000 of them. So there are quite a few of them out there. After the war, the airlines just gobbled them all up. They all went to do cargo carrying, passenger carrying after the war. This aircraft stayed in the military till about 1975. And if you're familiar with Tucson, Arizona, they call it the Boneyard, which is Davis Monthan Air Force Base.
It's where
all
those planes just, it looks like miles
they
and
park
miles
thousands
and
of them.
miles.
They park them out there until they figure out whether to dismantle them, turn them back into pots and pans, which were made out of aluminum, or sell them off to foreign countries. Some of the third world countries, second world countries need a military. So a lot of our stuff is sold or lend-leased to...
like a yard sale.
Yes, it is. Yeah. It's just really sad to see the stuff out there, knowing that a lot of it's going to get chopped up. We can talk about our 123 also, because they chopped up almost every other 123 except for a couple of them. We have one of those. I'll just take a little sidebar here. If you come out to the museum, we actually have, very rare, the last flying C-123 Fairchild provider in the world. I have not seen another one fly in the last 5 or 10 years. There were a couple of museums trying to make them fly, but if you come out, you'll see it takes a very dedicated crew to keep an airplane like that flying. So when you do come out to the museum, you can see that airplane. Our claim to fame is we did a movie with Tom Cruise. At one point, Tom Cruise was a member of our museum, and if you're listening, Tom Cruise, your membership has expired. So we would like you to renew. There's a movie, while we're talking about the 123, there is a movie called American Made. And if you get towards the end of the movie, Tom Cruise, who plays a famous drug runner named Barry Seals, it's actually the Barry Seals story, which is what the movie's about. He gets bigger and bigger aircraft, and in the end, you will see Beaver Falls' very famous C-123 towards the end of the movie with Tom Cruise in the back of it. So we can talk about the museum a little bit later, but let's get back to the C-47.
Just on that C-123, I've heard that when they went to make that movie, his agent or producers or whoever those people were.
When you're that big, you're people.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know, because I know you have your people, Eddie.
I got people everywhere.
Right.
Yourself.
But they said, well, he's going to actually fly the airplane. And one of our policies is that you can't even ride on the airplane unless you're a member.
Right.
And, I mean, Tom Cruise probably could afford the $30 a year membership.
Possibly.
I've been told secondhand that his agent was reluctant on joining.
It's $30.
And our organization said, then he's not flying it.
Yeah.
We don't care what your name is. I don't know if that's true, David, or what, but that's what
I
I've
like
heard.
that story.
That's what I've heard.
No idea.
All right, we're going to go with that being true.
Yeah.
Tom Gargaro and Dave Messersmith are my guests. It's Teleforum. More after news on Beaver County Radio.
Ambridge Italian Villa, a family tradition with the taste sensation.
If you are planning an outdoor event or really any gathering and want to make a great impression, it's time to call the Convoy. The convoy of food trucks from Ambridge Italian Villa. With multiple vehicles and a huge menu of dining delights, the food truck fleet from Ambridge Italian Villa will deliver Greek, Italian, Mediterranean, and traditional American favorites on 4 wheels. Ask about the Rapioli, a new food truck concept now available from Ambridge Italian Villa. Call 724-266-1919 or click AmbridgeItalianVilla.com. On-site catering for any size event is also available. It's time to get trucking down the highway and put your plans together and order up a party on 4 wheels from Ambridge Italian Villa.
Ambridge Italian Villa, a family tradition with the taste sensation.
I'm Patty.
And I'm Bob. We're retired, and we live at St. Barnabas in the Village.
We used to have a house.
Lived in it for 40 years.
Raised our kids.
But it became too much. The upkeep, the stairs.
Moving seemed like such a hassle. We didn't even know where to start, so we didn't.
Until we met Cindy at St. Barnabas.
She talked us through our options.
Yeah, and she helped us with our move and all the arrangements.
There was so much stuff. Who knew we had 3 fondue pots?
But she made it easy.
So easy.
Now we enjoy ourselves.
Golf, the pool, new friends, shuttles to where we want to go.
The pub and the food.
So good.
There wasn't a long-term commitment or any large fees.
And they have a healthcare system on campus with doctors if we need it. The kids really like that.
The kids like to come and eat with us.
There's an easier, worry-free way to retire at the Village at St. Barnabas. Come visit us for a free and informative counseling session and personal tour.
I can't believe you waited so long.
I can't believe you waited so long.
Visit stbarnabashealthsystem.com or call 724-443-0700.
Hey Pirates fans, did you catch the epic Skyblast fireworks extravaganza at PNC Park earlier this season? It was 2 times the length and 2 times the firepower of our usual fireworks displays. Well, if you missed it, we're doing it again. Come watch the Pirates take on the Reds Saturday, August 20th at 7:05. Then stick around after the game for our second and final Skyblast fireworks extravaganza of the season, presented by IBEW Local Union 5. Get your tickets today at pirates.com.
Beaver County Radio's news source, 95.7 and 99.3 FM, along with 1230 WBVP, 1460 WMBA, and streaming at beavercountyradio.com.
Good morning, this is Curtis Walsh sitting in for Frank Sparks, and today's forecast is calling for mostly cloudy skies with a chance of thunderstorms this afternoon. We'll have a high of 78 degrees. We'll take a complete look at the Beaver County forecast after this look at news. An Elizabeth Township man was arrested for suspicion of DUI Friday in Aliquippa. Here's Beaver County Radio News correspondent Sandy Giordano with the details.
On Friday at 10:32 a.m., Pennsylvania State Police responded to the area of the westbound Aliquippa exit where it was reported a male subject passed out behind the wheel of his vehicle. Upon responding to the area, it was discovered that the male operator, Ronald Hallis, 45 of Elizabeth, Pennsylvania, was under the influence of alcohol. He was placed under arrest for DUI. This is Sandy Giordano reporting for Beaver County Radio.
New information has been released by the Center Township Police Chief as part of the ongoing investigation of the man who shot himself in Center Township Police custody. The search warrant leading to the man's arrest was due to him being suspected of making ghost guns. Beaver County Radio News correspondent Sandy Giordano is working on getting more details. A case of monkeypox has been confirmed in the area. The infected person was at YMCA Camp Conaquee Spencer in Farmville and is said to be in quarantine. It was not confirmed whether the person was a member of staff or a camper. A Monaca man was arrested for suspicion of DUI Saturday. Here's Beaver County Radio News correspondent Sandy Giordano with more.
Pennsylvania State Police responded on Saturday at 1:13 a.m. at Kennedy Boulevard and Upland Street and stopped a vehicle for a traffic violation. Scott Reynolds, 35 of Monaca, admitted to drinking alcohol and was found to be impaired. He was arrested for suspicion of DUI. Charges are pending through district court. This is Sandy Giordano reporting for Beaver County Radio.
Pennsylvania State Police say a man drove into a crowd at a fundraiser for victims of a recent deadly house fire. One person was killed and 17 others were injured Saturday. He then returned home and beat his mother to death. Police said 24-year-old Adrian Oswaldo Sura Reyes was arraigned early Sunday on 2 counts of criminal homicide. They alleged that he told them he was upset about an argument with his mother, saw the crowd in Berwick, and drove through it. Court documents don't list an attorney for him. State police say Sura Reyes is not currently a suspect in the fire, which killed 7 adults and 3 children. An annual 10-day music festival in eastern PA resumed Sunday after a reported shooting sent participants scrambling for safety just before the conclusion of Saturday night's concert. Bethlehem police converged on the area just before the Music Fest entertainment was to end for the night at 11 p.m. after people reported hearing a gunshot. There was no immediate word on whether anyone was injured. Police called it an isolated incident and said the festival was shut down for the safety of patrons. The city had authorized the festival to resume at noon Sunday. Police say a man drove his car into a barricade near the U.S. Capitol and then began firing gunshots in the air before fatally shooting himself. Police say the man didn't seem to be targeting any member of Congress. The incident happened just before 4 a.m. Sunday at a vehicle barricade set on Capitol Hill. Authorities say that as the man was getting out of the car, the vehicle became engulfed in flames. Police say he then opened fire, shooting several bullets into the air as police approached. The man's identity hasn't been released, but investigators have located addresses for him in Delaware and Pennsylvania and have learned he had a criminal history in the past decade.
Here's the Beaver County forecast on 95.7 and 99.3 FM, along with 1230 WBVP, 1460 WMBA, and streaming at beavercountyradio.com.
Mostly cloudy skies this morning with some scattered thunderstorms possible this afternoon. We'll have a high of 78 degrees. Tonight, we'll have mostly cloudy skies this evening with showers developing after midnight, going down to a low of 62. Tomorrow, high of 80 with morning showers. That high of 80 sticks around Wednesday with partly cloudy skies. On Thursday, high of 81, partly cloudy, and on Friday, a little warmer with a high of 84 and mostly sunny skies. Currently, here in Beaver County, we are at 73 degrees. That's a look at the news for now. I'm Curtis Walsh for 1230 WBVP 1460 WMBA 95.7 FM, 99.3 FM, all presented by St. Barnabas and streaming live around the world at beavercountyradio.com.
Be a part of the conversation with Teleforum, weekdays from 9 till noon on WBVP, WMBA, and now at 99.3 FM.
Having a wonderful conversation. It will continue. Dave Messersmith, pilot, he's the guy in charge. I'm going to get back to the plane in a second. Tom Gargaro. We're talking about the Air Heritage Museum, and we're talking about a C-47, not just a C-47, a C-47 with, what do they call it, provenance. This thing saw action, and we can see it here in Beaver County in the backstory. So get back into, tell me about this plane. It's amazing to me how inanimate objects can come to life with a good story. It's wonderful. Tell me more about the C-47, Dave.
Okay. Well, we talked about the 123 a little bit, and we'll talk about the museum later on before we go. We'll get back to the C-47. This aircraft finally went surplus. We talked about Tucson, Arizona, Davis-Moth, and this is the Air Force storage area. About 1975, the military finally parked this aircraft.
What causes the military to say, okay, we don't need that anymore?
If you're familiar with the C-130, the C-123, a lot of new transports, new designs came on the market. So just like Pittsburgh now has the C-17, which replaced their C-130, the C-47 was replaced with the 123 and several other transports. So they just become obsolete. A piece of aluminum only has so many cycles.
Is that what it is? It's going,
So
no matter
they
what
just-
you do, it's going to
They just wear out.
fatigue.
Like a car.
Yeah.
We'd all
okay.
be driving our 66 Corvettes, but they're all worn out, or we can't afford them. So anyway, about 1975, this aircraft went surplus to the military. The state of Florida went down to Tucson and bought, I'm guessing, about 8 of them. So if you go down to Florida and you don't get chewed up by mosquitoes down by Fort Myers, that was because this aircraft and its other helpers were spraying for mosquitoes in the Lee County area.
So that's what they did. They
turned it into a sprayer.
Okay.
That's the good news is it was very well taken care of by the taxpayers of Florida.
Okay.
And so the engines, propellers, all of the modifications to the airframe were all paid for by the state of Florida. The bad news is that it had all the military significant instrumentation and the furnishings in the back of the aircraft. When the state of Florida got a hold of it, all they wanted to do was gut it all out. So we lost the navigation station, we lost the heavy-duty floor, we lost the troop seats, we lost bulkheads, we lost doors. They just basically gutted it and put a couple of big spray tanks in the back and turned it into a crop duster or a sprayer. So if you were half asleep at 10 o'clock at night and something rumbled over your head at about 300 feet, it was a C-47 out there spraying mosquitoes. So that's the bad news. I guess the good news is that they don't spray mosquitoes every day. They don't operate like an airline. So our C-47 is one of the, if not the lowest time C-47 in the world. Most of them have about 60,000 hours on it. Ours has 11. And when it comes to a restoration and keeping an old
11,000
wear and tear,
Okay.
yes. So we acquired this aircraft from the state of Florida. There's an upgraded version of the C-47 DC-3 that has a turboprop engine on it that's a little more user-friendly. So that one of those replaced 2 of these for reliability, and it went surplus to the state of Florida in about 2012. we were able to pick it up from the state of Florida and delivered it up here to Beaver Falls, Beaver County Airport. And that's when our restoration started with the aircraft.
Which is more difficult when it comes to restoration for the Air Heritage Museum, to find the parts or find the people that know what to do with the parts?
Pick one.
Both. Yeah.
We have a word we've made up at the museum, and it's called, you've heard of aluminum and titanium. We have a word called, it's unobtainium. There are quite a few of these. They made 10,000 of them. So if you go on Google Earth and look like Tegucigalpa down in, what is that, Honduras, you'll see about 6 of them in the grass. They've been parked. There's a lot of them around for surplus parts. There's a company in Ohio that also specializes in parts, so we are able to find a lot of parts. If there are parts that aren't available and everybody really needs them, then somebody is tooled up to make them. But we have to be very careful when we're working on something that we don't force it. Like a car, you could take apart and beat it really hard with a hammer or heat it up. If you damage it, boom, off to AutoZone.
Right.
And you can get a new part. We have to be very careful that we don't break things as we're rebuilding them. So it is a challenge. The other challenge are people to work on them. While we're talking about people to work on airplanes at Air Heritage, everybody thinks you have to be a licensed mechanic to work on an airplane, and that's not true. How do you become a licensed mechanic? You work on airplanes. So there's your answer. If you come to the museum, you can work on an airplane if you have the skill sets. If you can fix your car and you know how to do stuff on a car, that transfers over to airplanes. The only requirement is you have to work under the supervision of a licensed mechanic. So we're always looking for volunteers. I'll sneak a plug in there. So, but it is hard to find people that have the experience. Luckily, here in the area at one time, the reserve unit had the C-123s, which are an old vintage aircraft. So we've still got a few people from that group that work on airplanes, so that they're familiar with this type of vintage maintenance, if you want to call it that. So, but every day we say we lose more members than we gain, because it's kind of a skill that most of the older people have. We do get some younger people show up, but the last young person that showed up, he helped us out quite a bit, and then Boeing up in Seattle hired him.
Really?
So, wow. And unfortunately, he's working for a museum up there on his day off. So we lost a good one there. But, we're always looking for people to come out and help out. So
well, my guest in the first hour was Colt Codner, and we were talking about the aviation program at CCBC. Could there be any connection there? Because if you've got kids that want to go study that, it would stand to reason they might be kids that might be interested in turning wrenches for that too.
There might be some interest there. The CCBC, they specialize in the flight part of it and also the air traffic control part of it. The interest that we get is from PIA, Pittsburgh Institute of Aeronautics, which is over at Allegheny Airport.
Okay.
So we'll get some of them. But most of the time we find the students are just working so hard to get through the program that on a weekend they're probably steadying. So we get them once in a while come over to the museum. But a lot of those guys are just working really hard to get a degree out of the way.
Right.
So. But so it is a challenge. So we around March of 2012 is when we picked this aircraft up. I was driving by the museum. I had not been totally involved in the museum at that point. I do a lot of other stuff at Beaver County Airport in aviation. And I saw this airplane parked on the ramp, and I knew it was over. Because
like seeing a girl from across the smoky bar kind of moment.
No, I'm married, no comment.
Yeah.
No, but it's just very high on my list of airplanes I appreciate, airplanes I'd like to fly. And since I'm a pilot and a mechanic, since I want to fly it, I also want to know who's tightening the nuts and bolts. So I got involved in the restoration of the aircraft. That was around 2012. It took us about 6 years. The aircraft came to us, though mechanically in fairly good condition. In Florida, it sat out in the sun. So a lot of the items that don't like sitting in the sun, the paint, the fabric on the flight control, stuff like that, all needed taken care of. We stripped off all the paint, took care of corrosion issues, damage issues, and it took us about 6 years. Hoses, anything rubber has to be replaced. All the actuators have to be rebuilt. All the systems tested, proven, adjusted. So it took us until November of 2018 to actually fly the airplane again. At that point, it was painted in its September of 1944 paint job. All the systems had been overhauled, inspected, tested, and the flight test basically went without a hitch. So,
how much does it cost? How much did it cost from the time you from the purchase of the plane to it being airworthy again, how much money had to be put into that?
Well, I'd say very little.
Yeah.
I'm going to put a plug in for PPG, our local Pittsburgh plate glass paints. They donated all of the paint that we needed for the aircraft, all
Nice.
the prepping materials. The tires were donated, a lot of material donated.
Where do you get tires for an airplane?
Yeah, tires are us.
Tires are,
yeah. But so we had a lot of donation. Our biggest donation are human beings. The people that come out, stripping the paint off is just is an unbelievably painful experience. All of the hands-on work, that's our biggest problem. I can go buy a hose. I just pull out a credit card and I can solve that problem.
Right.
But finding a crew that knows how to do fabric work that goes back to the 20s, that's a challenge. So the expense of the restoration, I doubt we put more than $20,000-$30,000 into it to get it flying over a 6-year period. But we put thousands of hours. Tom uses my name a lot, but it's like an orchestra over there. I'm only the conductor. The conductor, if he's standing there by himself, nothing happens. It's the people in the orchestra, and that's the organization at Air Heritage that make this happen. There's 250 members on any given day,
including Tom Cruise.
Tom Cruise,
you're going to check
if he would renew Thomas.
Yeah, $30,
I
dude.
think he made a few bucks on that last movie. So, but there's a core group of about 30 people, and we work with that to keep stuff going over there. And
have you ever thought about buying your own plane and doing your own plane? You've got both skill sets needed.
Well, I've owned a couple of airplanes.
Have you?
Yeah, I've had some old World War II training aircraft.
Okay, what does one do with those? Take them out on the weekend or
fly for fun?
Fly for fun?
Yeah. So it kind of was a nice break from my airline career or my military career, where you fly where they tell you to.
Mm-hmm.
I go out and we call it just burning holes in the sky, or if we go out to get something to eat, we call it a $100 hamburger. But so it's fun. I do some teaching also, so I get to fly other people's aircraft. That's even better because they pay for the maintenance and the fuel.
Mm-hmm.
And I also have a maintenance business where I do just help my friends with minor repairs.
How much is a gallon of airline fuel right now?
We paid over $9 2 weeks ago at Youngstown.
Okay.
Normally it's about $8. It's been coming down.
All right.
So
what kind of mileage we talking about?
Well, we don't even look at mileage. We do the C-47 does about 140 miles per hour, and while we're doing that, we're burning at cruise about 80 gallons an hour. So you can just say it costs us about $1,000 an hour to operate this aircraft. So if you and I want to go out for a ride, it's easy to do in my personal airplane. It burns about 7 gallons an hour. But the only time that C-47 moves, if you live in the area and you see it moving, we're making money. That's the only way we can operate that aircraft. So.
It's otherwise, because you could literally lose thousands of dollars by starting the thing and letting it idle, couldn't you?
Yes. On takeoff, just to get it moving, to get it airborne, it burns over 300 gallons an hour. The good news is we only do that for about 1 minute.
Okay, so $2,500 roughly to get the thing airborne.
Well, about $1,000 an hour.
Okay. Where does all the money come from the Air Heritage Museum?
Well, most of our money comes through the front door, donations.
Does it?
While you brought that up, let's plug the museum a little bit.
Absolutely.
We are probably at any given time Beaver Falls' #1 attraction. If you Google
Beaver
what to
County's
do,
number one attraction.
Beaver County. If you Google what to do in Beaver County, and you'll find out that the Air Heritage Museum is #1. We're free. Did I mention we're free?
Mm-hmm.
Free, like the commercial says. We don't charge you to come in. If you don't like it, don't leave a donation. If you like it, help us out. We have about 250 members. None of us have figured out how to get paid there. From the president to Tom, the vice president, to the board of directors. Other than free water out of the refrigerator, no one's been able to figure out how to make money there. We're all volunteers. There are no velvet ropes. A lot of museums you can't get within 10 feet of the airplanes. There are no velvet ropes. If you want to walk and put your hands on a T-28, which is in restoration, we have one of those right now. You can walk up. I tell people if you stand around too long, I'm going to put a tool in your hand. So, we're a very user-friendly museum. If you have children, we have one part of a fuselage. I call it the stimulator. That's a play on the word for simulator. The kids can get in there and they can bang it around and push the knobs and try to break stuff and just basically be a kid.
Yeah, they love it.
Yeah, so we're a very user-friendly museum.
The museum also relies a lot on, candidly, supporters like, Beaver County Radio, the Community College of Beaver County. Both organizations are huge supporters of Air Heritage, and that helps us too. You're letting us come on and talk about this today, gets us exposure. Again, I talked to Colt on the way out about that. We partner with CCBC all the time. Like Dave said, we're always looking to get people in. When I first walked in years ago, I thought, well, I'm not a pilot. I have no idea on how to fix a plane.
No, you're a car guy. You're not a plane guy.
I thought, well, I could probably sweep the floor. But see, there's, like Dave was saying, there's a lot of stuff that people can do there. And for me, I've always loved being around airplanes, right? So it's like a dream volunteer job for me. But we do appreciate all the support. The community supports us. What surprises me is whether we have an event up at our hangar or we go out of town. We were at Akron Fulton this last weekend, the weekend before that, Youngstown for air shows. And people that know the area here say, I never knew that place existed up there.
Right.
We found people from Chippewa who said, I knew the airport was there. I never knew that museum was there. So to me, it's like one of Beaver County's hidden gems.
Well, the fact that it's free and it's in the midst of an incredible program at CCBC and you've got volunteers. How did you get in it, Tom? Because I know you're a car guy and I know you help put together the Beaver Pulse car cruise every year. So did you figure out a way for a day to have 35 or 40 hours that none of us figured out? Because you had enough going on. What drew you to this?
Well, and, I've been involved with the cruise for years with the whole committee and Steve Peterson, but about 7 years ago when I retired, I walked in one day because I've always liked being around planes, and I looked around, didn't know anybody, and I thought, there's nothing I can do here.
Yeah.
So I walked out.
It's out of my pay grade. Sure.
About a year or so ago, our president, Bill Schillig, put out an email and said, hey, we need some people to step up. And I stopped over and said, I introduced myself and just said, I know I could sweep the floors. I know I could do that. I'm good at that, actually. You can ask Judith. I'm pretty good at it. And he said, he called me back a couple weeks later and said, we'd like you to get involved with the organization. And I came. It's almost like, to me, it's kind of like it was something that was meant to be. It's a passion for me. What these folks have built and sustained up at Air Heritage, I'm the newbie there, they've put in decades of work. But I'm very, very passionate about it. So is Judith. We just love the organization. We love what they've put together.
Is there anything that you would do other than what you're doing, Dave? Is anything
Sailing.
Yeah.
All right, yeah.
Where my cell phone doesn't work.
We're almost out of time, but I'm going to get into this real quick. You're sailing from Africa to where? Monaco? Where are you sailing from?
As I get farther and farther retired, I have some other bad habits. I do enjoy sailing. My wife and I love sailing, especially in the Caribbean where it's warm. We're not talking about sailing where there's ice in the water. I help people move sailboats. So
really?
I moved a couple of sailboats to Antigua from Virginia. I moved a sailboat just recently, a couple months ago, from the Bahamas back to North Carolina. And November, we have to wait till the hurricane season dies down. So normally around November 1st, I'm helping someone I've sailed with before bring his boat from the Grand Canaries, a 21-day sail to St. Lucia. And then when I get to St. Lucia, I'll probably jump in the water once, catch a flight home. But it's another bad habit. That can go on and on for hours talking about that. But I do enjoy sailing because it's you against the elements and your phone doesn't work. So
And your phone doesn't
no one can
work.
contact you. So.
Is there anything I should have asked either one of you? Tom Gargaro and Dave Messersmith have been my guests talking about the Air Heritage Museum and sailing other people's yachts. It's been a full hour. What should I have asked you that I didn't, you guys?
I can't think of anything. I would like to emphasize again how historic this week is going to be with the original pilot, Captain Edward Fromm. His children are coming in. They will be on his personal airplane for the first time in their life. We're going
to
make sure that we get a lot of photos and videos of Dave flying them. They are both extremely excited, and we're always very thankful to Beaver County Radio for having us in.
Dave, how much you charge to move a dinghy across a creek? Working working out a deal. All right, I
Name
got
of the creek.
I got to. Yeah, exactly. Show me a map of the creek. Exactly. Dave Messersmith and Tom Gargaro, my guest. It's Beaver County Radio.
Live music is back in Beaver County. St. Barnabas, along with the Beaver Station Cultural and Event Center, is pleased to present this year's summer concert series. 2 more big concerts are planned to take place on the event lawn next to Beaver Station in the east end of Beaver. The next show is August 26th, featuring Joe Grusecki and the House Rockers, with special guest